welcome to One on One. My name is Funmi Unuajefe, and on this episode, we'll be talking about teaching and raising children. My guest today is Oluwagbemileke Amoo. He's a parent and a passionate educator. He studied electrical electronics engineering, but then discovered his passion for teaching and pursued a career in education. He has a postgraduate certificate in education from the University of Nottingham, United Kingdom. He started his teaching professionally in 2010. He's a recipient of several awards, including the Coronal School Model Teacher of the Year. Leke is celebrated as a phenomenal teacher and teacher trainer home and abroad, especially for integrating technology with teaching and learning. He's a Microsoft certified educator, a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert, and he is presently the Vice Principal Strategy and Technology in Bloom Breed Schools, Port Harcourt. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Leke.
Thank you very much for having me, Mrs.
Okay, so I wanted to find out, how do your parents react to you switching from engineering to education?
To be honest, it was not an easy decision, but I guess one thing my parents have working for them is patience. So, they believe that a young man should make his own decision and pursue his passion, even though they have better ideas as to what a man should become. So, but after some time, seeing the success that teaching brought me, and seeing that I wasn't coming to them for assistance, financial assistance especially, they became comfortable with it, and I guess from there they began to support me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think with every profession, though, once you're able to make a success out of it and you're able to pay your own bills, and your parents are like, okay. So let's talk about homeschooling. I was speaking with you earlier in the green room, and you were telling me how you homeschool your daughter. Please tell me more about that, because I feel like that's a very tasking thing to do.
Indeed, it is very taxing. It's not straight to the point.
Okay.
We made, my wife and I, before we got married, decided what exactly we would do to raise the next generation.
Okay.
So it was just a casual conversation at first. It would be a nice idea to homeschool. My wife, of course, she's very busy. She's an entrepreneur, and so I didn't even think it was something she would take seriously until our child arrived. She came preterm, and so it became important for us to focus on her. So from that moment, my wife decided to start homeschooling her, and seeing the success that we were getting, it became something that she made her life's purpose. Okay,
so by success, what do you mean? Because the reason why I say this, I have also worked in a preschool for some time, and I find that sometimes when you're telling young children and toddlers to take instruction from their parents, they don't, but when it comes to their teacher, they listen up. So what do you mean when you say success in the homeschooling?
Okay, so knowing full well that our child came preterm, it became necessary for us to benchmark her progress with certain milestones. So with certain apps, we're able to tell, okay, this is what she should have achieved at this particular stage of her development. And my wife began to implement these things, and seeing that indeed our daughter was surpassing these even beyond what she should at that particular age. So that was the feedback she needed. And now my daughter, she started walking at the exact age she's meant to walk. She started having certain conversations, and now she can even have intellectual conversations with adults.
How old is she now?
She's 3 years old.
Oh, interesting.
And she's phenomenal. She's doing very well.
Yeah, you sound like a very proud father.
Oh, I am a very proud father. I make no secret.
Well done. So how long do you intend to homeschool her for?
At first, we talked about it. We said, okay, maybe until she's 5 years old. Now we're thinking about age 10.
Age 10?
Yes.
Okay, I find it very interesting because when, I feel like the regular school does more for a child beyond just learning. That's my personal view. So like social circles and then social skills, how is your daughter able to pick that up if she's just at home learning one-on-one with you and her mom?
Okay, truth is, we're not the only persons that my child interacts with, and I'd like to be generic here. Perhaps speaking for homeschooling parents,
yes.
The parents are not the only people the child will interact with in the child's lifetime. So yes, it is important to create social circles, and children will definitely have these interactions with people, whether with adults or with their peers. But knowing fully well that the objective of a child's development is not to continue to stay a child, it's for the child to become an adult as well. So it is necessary for the child to learn how to interact with contemporaries and with adults. But if a child is able to interact with adults, which actually happens a lot in a homeschooling setting, then the child is set for life, because many times these children who have more interactions with adults tend to be very precocious, more mature, and better balanced. And when they're even relating with their contemporaries, which happens with my daughter, they tend to see their contemporaries as babies. So my child's best friends are actually older than she. How often does she meet them? Once a week. Where? In church.
Yeah.
Okay, and so yeah, they meet in church, and sometimes they have weekends that we go out, and the holidays are often very fantastic times, because I mean more children are available, and so we have these homeschooling communities for yeah. While we were in Lagos, we had homeschooling communities, other mothers or parents who homeschool their children, so those are their friends, and then on the weekends we hang out with friends who have children as well. And by that, I mean, how much interaction really do children who even go to schools have? Many times they
have 8 hours. They have about 8 or 6 hours
of listening to the teacher.
Listening to the teacher, but also, even when listening to the teacher, I'm not trying to. I'm just very intrigued by it. So I'm not trying to knock it out. I'm just saying that even when listening to the teacher, they're sitting in class with other children.
Yes.
And you are a teacher, so
yes.
They're whispering here, they're saying this, they're doing that. They go to the playground. Even when little activities. So like when I worked in the preschool, even going a simple activity as going to wash your hands is a group activity. We're all going to the bathroom together to wash our hands.
Yes.
We're having lunch together. So all of those things. So I find it very interesting that even because anytime I hear homeschooling, I think of it as a foreign thing that in outside the country. But to hear that there are now communities in Nigeria is something interesting.
So by that question, I wasn't referring to being in the company of children.
Okay.
I'm actually referring to interaction in the sense that it creates a sense of interdependence, a sense of teamwork. The essence of social activity is not just about having friends.
Okay.
It's actually about learning the skills necessary for work, for life, like collaboration, adding value to other people. So being in a group of children is really not all that taking a child to a regular school is about.
Yes, sure,
So
I understand.
there's a lot.
But so let me just also add, how do parents because you and your wife have a teaching background, so I am assuming
no, she doesn't have a teaching background.
She doesn't have but she's married to a teacher.
Yes.
So it gives you but what about some parents that can't, if they're interested in this homeschooling now, but I don't have this power to even sit down and you raise stuff with my child and sit down and teach. Can they hire a lesson teacher who comes in the morning at certain hours, sits with this child and do all of that?
I know a few people who are doing that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So there are now homeschooling tutors that we can hire and bring to our homes. And
I even know a few families who are planning to relocate, and so because their relocation is falling just around the midterm, they don't even see the need to take a child to regular school and then pull the child midterm.
Right.
So they have somebody come to do the homeschooling for the period of the time that the children are waiting for relocation. And so that happens. And a few other people, that's what it is. They are homeschooling teachers who go, they support
that's
the
another
children
new
at
interesting
home.
industry.
It's actually, indeed,
it's interesting that you talk about relocation, because I was going to talk about that, to say that how do you think, because it's like it's Japa season, everybody's leaving. What impact will this have on, even though I know not everybody will leave, but what impact is this going to have? Because I know that, for example, in other industries, like in the banking industry and some other industries, it has affected certain departments and their workflow. So for Nigeria, how will this impact on us, on the education system?
It has impacted many organizations. It has already impacted schools, to be honest. So I know more than a few friends who have left the shores of Nigeria.
Are you leaving too?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, no, I am not. I'm still here. I'm very much here. That has been a conversation we've been on back and forth, but I'm here, and I have decided to be here for now. So we've lost some of our best hands. We've lost some of our best brains. However, what I know, especially about the education space, even though yes, this can also it can work in any other organization, is education has now become so dynamic thanks to technology, and so I'd even pictured that should it be that I traveled before now, would I be able to work from another country in Nigeria? I think yes, I can do that. So some of my friends who have relocated are still teaching
in their schools?
Not in their schools anymore.
Okay,
but they're
other
still adding value to the Nigerian education system.
Oh, fantastic.
Just that they've changed location.
So it's virtual.
Yes. Yeah, indeed, but it's just that while they're present in Nigeria, they're able to relate better with the situation and with the system, and they are able to create solutions that the system particularly needs. And that's one of the things that has tied me down mainly, because I know that I will understand the system better when I am a part of the system. So yeah, there's this perception that yes, you'll be able to add more value to the system when you are in another system. I think I can have that interaction by visits and by study and by having these online courses, but you have to be in the system to know where the shoe pinches. And so yes, we feel it. To be candid, we can't lie about it. We feel it, but I don't think hope is lost entirely, because even those who have gone, some of them are already thinking about coming back.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, some of them are thinking
That's
about
interesting.
coming
That's another conversation for another day. So let's talk about teaching generally. I find that oftentimes when very few people speak with teaching with your passion. And it's not at the time of this interview, ASU is, on strike. And many people, we don't consider education like a serious thing. I'm not sorry to say, we don't really consider education as a serious thing in Nigeria. But let's talk about the profession teaching. Oftentimes, I find that, especially with primary education and secondary education, many people go into teaching as a last option. I did not get this course in this one, then I studied English, then I now have to become a teacher. Mm-hmm. No drive, no passion. So yes, sometimes I think that this passion thing can be overrated. So I don't expect you to be a dancing teacher in your class and say, oh, because I love mathematics and I love children, I'll be singing 2 times 2 for blah, blah, blah. But even with the training for the people that should, teach the children, because I feel like with education is the life of everything. If children are better educated, then we'll have better doctors, better technicians, better producers, better presenters, better everything once the education system is right. But we treat teaching as a last minute option. Why is that so? I know you're not the Minister of Education, but as the expert here.
Yes. Granted, I'm not the Minister of Education. I'm not speaking on behalf of the minister, but I am as much a part of the system, and I am feeling this. Yes, indeed, many people have had to take this decision simply because they want to survive, and it's not just a Nigerian problem; it's global. Even in the United States of America, several people are leaving, the teaching system as well. And sometimes I ask myself, why would you do that? It's also because they didn't have a choice when they went in the first place. And so for those of us who are passionate about it, we have we have been broke and we've been broken. We have also had times when we felt underappreciated and undervalued, but we have stuck with it. Yes, the Nigerian system is really poor. The education system is really bad. Some people who studied it, in fact, I didn't study education as you know, obviously. Yes, I discovered my passion for education at the time that it became an option to choose education. I didn't want to take it, even though I knew I had a passion for it, simply because I associated it with penury and poverty. Yes. And so, unfortunately, some other people just take it grudgingly. And so if you come into the profession with that grudging attitude, you will definitely walk through it with grudging attitude. At the time, I also almost gave up on education when I could not take being broke anymore. And so I tried to go back into engineering. Well, it worked up to a point. I guess I'm glad it did not work eventually. And so when I had no other choice and all I was faced with was education, I began to ask myself, is there a way I can thrive and become successful? And success is relative for some people, but for me, one of the things I quantify as success is being able to afford enough to fend for myself, basically, start a family, and then have enough savings to begin to plan a future. And so when I asked these questions, and of course I talked to my mentors, and that's another important thing. People who have mentors are properly guided. And so they were able to help me understand what it was I really needed. So I was still able to stay in the place of education and began to think about other income streams to help myself to achieve what it is that I want. So I think it comes down to, and it affects every profession. It's not just education. So yes, we're using education as a benchmark, but there are several other people who are even in the banking system, who don't have a passion for it. There are some other people who are medical doctors today who honestly have a passion for something else. So I think we just always have to find the place where we can relate to our core selves. So I found education as the place where I could relate to my core self, and then I also realized my other needs, and I found ways to meet those needs while not losing my passion for education as well. And so if there's anybody here today who's in education but doesn't have a passion for education, I'd advise you, find your passion, stay in the place of your passion, and you'll definitely be sorted from there.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for that. We'll take a short break. In fact, a funny thought came to my head when you're talking about a doctor not being passionate. I'm just thinking in my mind, my surgeon is not passionate, but he's not passionate about medicine and he's passionate about football. What happens when he's doing a surgery? Will you see my intestine as a goalpost? Or how does that work?
I hope not.
I'm just playing around. So let's just take a quick break. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back talking more about education in Nigeria, homeschooling, and the entire works. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining in, this is One on One, and my name is Funmi Unuajefe. My guest today is an education expert, and we're talking about everything concerning, well, not everything, but basically primary and secondary education. So let's talk about this rush that Nigerian parents, and I don't like to generalize and say African or anything, Nigeria, because I live here, and I'm raising my child here. This rush that Nigerian parents do, where they want their children to finish school at a certain age very quickly, and they were coming out to boast, finish school at the age of 14, the university at the age of 15. I'm like, why? What's the rush? So even with that, they cut off the children even from primary 4, and they're taking them all the way to GS1. Some parents don't even allow their children to do primary 6. Now, you are the expert. Tell me, first of all, what you think about this. And then some people even argue. In fact, I had a not so recent argument with one of my friends, and we're going on and how he was telling me how primary 6 is not relevant and blah, blah, blah. And though some people's reasons have been financial, to say, you know what, if I can cut this school fees, I want them to go and pay it in another place. But some people really just about they are rushing the child so that they can finish young and early. What's your take on this?
Okay, so there are actually two types of rush. So you've just mentioned one. That's the first rush about skip school, skip a primary education, skip a class or two, and then move into secondary. There's the one that is done before that, and that's the
double promotion.
The nursery. So some people start the children early on certain classes, and so you would even find some schools that give the children textbooks of the class ahead.
Okay.
Mainly,
I've
yes.
seen that, yeah.
So you would even sometimes in some classes you find a 3-year-old in a nursery 2 classroom, for instance, very young child being required to do some work of a 5-year-old, sometimes even the work of a 6-year-old. And so some parents believe that if the child starts early, the child will definitely finish early. The child would look smart. The child will feel fulfilled, especially when he's the youngest amongst his mates and he's able to do what people older than him are doing. I think for some parents it's a sense of pride. Some parents also feel that they're giving children a good head start so that the child will definitely get to the workplace quickly. Same thing for those who skip a class or two in primary. They believe beyond just the finances, you've just given that as an example. And to be honest, I honestly don't know why some parents think that the school fees that they'll pay for 1 year is something so significant compared to the effect that decision is having on the child. But so some parents simply feel it's good, especially in the Nigerian system. I think one of the things I even contributed so strongly to it was there was a time in Nigeria that banks were recruiting people from a particular age range. Yes, so from 21, I think it was between 21 to 24. And so anybody who's above that age is disqualified. It's pretty much just a mindset that is set on helping the child become a very good employee of labor. But parents who think differently, who believe that they are raising a child to become a problem solver, to become an entrepreneur. They are not concerned about that. Their concern is this child should be able to discover himself, find himself or herself enough, be so emotionally independent, become socially relevant, so that this child can create solutions to problems. If you have that perspective, then it doesn't matter what age your child finishes primary school or secondary school, because you're simply waiting for your child to attain independence. So that's the issue. Is once we have these things in a proper perspective, then it doesn't matter, because now children differ. You can have a 7-year-old who's so smart, so intelligent, and is able. Even the school would probably even consider to double promote the child, even though I know that many private schools now don't think about that. They think about differentiating learning. So the child can be in primary 4 and the child is given some task that a GSS 1 person should do, for instance, simply because the child is operating at that level.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's necessary that the child should still, there's no point rushing. So I have yet to see the benefit of it, other than those examples I've given. The child finishes early, but there's a lot of demerits to rushing these children.
Okay, please tell us about that. Tell us about the demerits.
So the demerits mainly, one of the demerits actually is, if a child, there are certain ages that cognitive development is formed in a child. You can't rush that. Yes, you can rush attainment of academic knowledge, but you cannot rush mental development. The child simply needs to get to that age, or simply needs to be exposed to the environment that will enhance that cognition, that will strike certain neurons in the brain to make a connection of the dots. Everything we do, everything your eyes catch, my nose smell, everything our senses simply pick, they go into the brain and they make connections, but until the brain is developed to a particular point, those connections will not make sense. You and I sit and somebody talks to us, whether in church or in any other religious organization or a motivational speaker is speaking, we're able to connect to these things simply because we have developed our brains to a point. Now, you put a 14-year-old in a lecture room with a lecturer. That child is yet to connect, unless his or her neurons have developed enough, he's yet to connect the relevance of what he or she is studying from that lecturer to his life. Now, these children need to be properly formed. They need to grow mentally to the point where they know why they are taking certain decisions. Many of these young children that we rush, they expect us to determine for them what they will become in the future, or they make this decision based on what they see on media. But when you wait patiently for your child to attain the proper age, he or she will become independent and able to take his or her own decision. This is what parents who rush the children rob them of.
Okay, so that means you need to start a campaign. Because and the reason why I say this is because many parents, even now, so for example, my son did primary 6, he just resumed a new session, and some people are like, this son is so smart, why are you listening to primary 6? You just take and I'm like, no, he has to be emotionally mature, and that's what I even think that 1 year gap is. And when we're talking about social skills and so many things, that is what that is for. But I'm glad that an expert, and I think you should carry it out as a campaign, because sometimes I even find that even the schools are the ones championing to say that, you don't have to, so that we can take you. It's very essential that those things are, properly.
I have begun the campaign anyway.
Oh, great! You have.
Yeah,
please,
I have.
please.
I already have it in my book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Smart Book for Smart Parents, and I even have webinars. Some heads of schools invite me to their schools.
Fantastic!
So
please
I do these things
please,
to encourage
please
parents.
carry it out, and I hope that many of those parents, are watching and listening to this interview. So this leads me to my next question, where about the parent partnering with the school. Okay. So like we know that you and I are not the same. Everybody is different. Mm-hmm. So some children will excel in academics, some children will excel in sports, some children excel in other activities, maybe like music or something else. How do I partner as a parent with the school to ensure that they help, because I feel like the teacher spends more time, in the school. So you help me identify that, and then we now begin to work together, because I find that many of us, and I'm also guilty as well, we only measure children just by they passed in physics, just by the results. When there is so much more to a child, how do I as a parent not fall into that trap and able to Kibwe.
Okay, so that question now is, how do I partner with the school to benefit my child, or how do I partner with the school to benefit the children?
With children. Okay, well, so my yeah, next one. So my child and yes, the children.
Okay.
So that I know that this is what this
because to be candid, indeed, if a parent's concern is for the children, you're certain that your child is definitely going to be catered to.
Okay.
So some of the best parents I have had in my over 12 years of teaching go beyond the concern for their child to the concern for the children in partnership with the school, because indeed they're certain that whatever it is that the school is doing to develop, teaching methodologies of teaching for all the children will definitely affect their children. But of course, let's start with your child. So some of my best parents never let me rest. Let's say that way. So they stay in touch constantly. It starts from home.
Okay.
It's not enough to pay school fees, send your child to school, no rest though. Parents don't rest in this economy. They work. Go to work and then come home. How's your homework? Oh, you've done it? Okay, good, and that's it. Okay. I think that some of the best parents are parents who actually go the extra mile. It's actually not supposed to be the extra mile. It's simply what we're meant to do, to ensure to be involved in what the child has brought from school or is learning in school. So one of the things I recommend for parents to do is don't just ask, how was school today? Ask, what was challenging about school today?
Okay.
What was fantastic about school today? Asking questions that require the children to say more than yes or no, or to say more than that's fine, it's okay. To think creatively. Now, the responses the children give would inform the parent of what to discuss with the school, starting, of course, with the teacher to say, I found out this information. Oh, this is fantastic. I see that you guys are doing this in your class today. My child told me this today, or my child told me that today. So start with the teacher. Especially if the child has now said something that is of a concern, and it's best you relay that to the teacher first. But some other parents jump the gun and go straight to the head of school and make some complaints and all of that. Sometimes these things are said from your child's perspective, but if you actually inquire from the teacher, you might get a better picture of what exactly happened. And so with that, and if you now notice that it's become a trend, then that's something you now need to take higher, report to the organization.
Okay.
Some parents are phenomenal. Some of the ideas I have implemented in my classroom that have made the most, in fact, that has contributed to my success as a teacher came from parents.
Okay.
So the parents, for instance, recommended for his own daughter that I should help to draft a jotter that would give the child a goal to achieve on a weekly basis. And at the end of that week, we would do an assessment. And so that was it. That was the recommendation. I implemented it. At the point of implementing it, I realized, you know what, I could incentivize this to help the child improve. So I discussed with him and said, at the end of a particular period, let's do this. Give your child this reward. And I began to implement it for some other children, and they saw the change. So we began to take our decision of development for the children beyond just academic subjects, but to behavioral, and then to things that they need to do outside the school, outside academia. Okay.
Oh wow, our time is up. Even I want to beg my director, but it's funny how time flies when you're really getting into the meat of the conversation. But just in 1 minute, let's just squeeze in this last question. Not in 1 minute, in a few seconds. Tell me, in your years of teaching, what makes a good parent? I know that not one size fits all, and what works for you will not work for, but what makes a good parent?
A present parent.
Yeah,
Presence. I'll just summarize it as that. Presence. That's what makes a good parent. Be present. Don't just be available, but be present. Be fully involved in everything that involves your child. And then, of course, allow your child to make some decisions, not all, some decisions. Entrust responsibility to the child. So be present and entrust responsibility to the child. That way, you will see your child grow and you will see yourself improving as a parent.
Thank you. That's a fantastic, you truly are an expert. Interesting conversation I've had today with my guest, Leke Amoo, on education and parenting and the works. But that's all we can take today on this episode of One on One. Please join us again sometime soon. My name is Funmi Unuajefe. Enjoy the rest of your day.